And you don't know how much the press is covering it. I haven't seen much in the Times about it, and I don't expect
What Times?
to.
The New York Times?
Yes. I don't expect
Don't hold your breath, Carl.
A major issue.
Welcome to Real Clear Politics for October 1st. I'm Andrew Walworth, and joining me are RCP President and co-founder Tom Bevan and Washington Bureau Chief Carl Cannon. Well, guys, the great government shutdown of 2025 is finally here, but a lot of the government is still open. Tom, here's just some of what is still operating despite the failure of Congress to come up with a budget agreement. The post office is open, the VA, the IRS, the national parks, the Smithsonian, student loan billing, so the bills are going out. Social Security is open, the FAA. Anyway, you get the idea. It's possible, or is it possible, that what makes this government shutdown different is that the government is largely operating as per normal?
It could very well be. I know there's, TSA apparently is still functioning and working. I guess they're working without pay, air traffic controllers. And so there's a lot of the government that's working. There are some areas that are closed down. I know apparently there's one lonely dude at BLS. That's it. He's just sitting there. But everybody else has been, you see this term furloughed, but then you recognize that the president has said that, because in the past, as Carl mentioned, I think yesterday on the show, and we've talked about before, past shutdowns, people get furloughed. They're not fired, they're just furloughed. And then they get rehired when everything gets up and running again, and they get back pay. So it's like they are made whole. It's like they never lost a
vacation,
step.
Basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but this time it could be different. And that's really, if in fact this shutdown ends up with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of government employees, federal government employees losing their jobs, I think Democrats, as I said, might end up feeling differently about this one as it gets in the rearview mirror. I continue to think that, Democrats are they're losing the messaging war on this, because even though Republicans are in the majority in the House and the Senate and have the White House, it does seem like Republicans have the upper hand in the messaging wars. Democrats just need to, they are unified in preventing this bill from going to the president's desk. And so they are the obstacle to keeping the government open. And I think that's pretty plain and clear to everybody.
Well, it should be clear to everybody, Tom, but it isn't. And the polling shows that more people slightly more blame Republicans than Democrats. And I was curious about why that is. And my inbox was filled with dozens of emails today in identical language. The DNC, all the Democratic leaders, Democratic candidates for Congress, the Republican shutdown. I mean, it's Orwellian. The Republicans have a bill to keep the government going. Democrats vote against it while boasting that they're doing this to protect Medicare and the vulnerable people from healthcare. Democrats want it both ways. They say, we're doing this on principle, shutting the government down to protect these healthcare subsidies, and then turn around and say, but the Republicans shut it down. And I don't know, Tom, if you watched Morning Joe today the way I did, I mean, this is just being spoon-fed.
I don't watch Morning Joe, by the way.
Spoon-fed to Democratic audiences
years ago
that Republicans did this. And it's a kind of the chutzpah of it is astonishing. It's just a brazen lie. And I would respect the Democrats more by saying, we know that a government shutdown is terrible. We've spoken, and you can go on YouTube and find clips of us saying so. But in this case, we have to protect the most vulnerable people who would be without health care. That's not what they're saying. They're saying Republicans shut down the government while we're trying to protect health care. So I don't know that, I'm not sure the messaging thing's all that clear. But from a nonpartisan standpoint, which is what I am and what Real Clear Politics is, this is a disgrace. It's the United States of America. We're shutting the government down. Speaker Johnson said something. Mike Johnson said that Chuck Schumer shouldn't be shutting the government down for personal reasons. What he meant by that was that Schumer's anticipating a challenge in the primary from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and he's doing this to protect his political life. I think that's a fair comment. But again, the Democrats should just talk about this on the merits. They think this is worth it. But I have to tell you, most of these people being laid off are Democrats. A lot of them are not going to get their jobs back, Tom. We've talked about this. This is the third or fourth time we talked about this on this program. The Trump administration is on much firmer ground, it seems to me, in terms of these legal challenges to people who are furloughed. If they say, well, we found out during the shutdown their jobs are not essential, so we're cutting that. We're cutting those jobs. We're not cutting the people, cutting their jobs so they lose their job. But if you think about the workers, it's just disgraceful that the United States of America would ask. There's about 1 million people today working without being paid. What's the excuse for that? Now, if they were a labor union and they went on strike, you'd say, all right, well, they decided to do this. They had no say in this.
But Carl, they will get paid. That's unless they get fired, they will get paid. And even if they get fired, I imagine they'll get some sort of severance. I mean, it's just not true that these government employees do not get paid. Or
no,
that
they always have. They always have in the. They always have in the past, Andy. But I'm, if you're not brought back to work, you're not going to get back pay. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, yes, but you'll get paid. It's not like.
Let me get this straight. You work for the government. You work for you're a loyal American. You love your country. You're working for the government. Then the Democrats and Republicans conspire to get you furloughed. You work, for 35 days. That was the last one without pay. Oh, and then you're told, by the way, your job's not needed anymore by someone who doesn't even really know what your job is. It strikes me as manifestly unfair. Am I the only person left who'll defend public servants?
No, here's my fervent hope coming out of this is that maybe if they do this, and it's weird the way the incentives work out on this, Tom, because the Trump administration sort of has an incentive to make it appear at least like the government is operating fine because they want to get rid of government employees and say, look, we can quote, shut it down for a couple of days and you won't even notice, Mr. and Mrs. American voter. I think that's part of the message they're trying to get across here. And they sort of are doing this. I will be curious to see on the news tonight as what are they showing that will show like here's the devastating effect of the government shutdown, because that's what the reporters will have to show. They used to be able to show that the Smithsonian was shut down or you couldn't go to the national parks. All that kind of stuff is still operating and will continue to operate. It just seems to me that maybe this will make people stop thinking about shutting down the government, is, because I'm so tired of this story. We have to do this story every now and then. Every time they've got a budget problem, it's like, oh, they're going to shut the government down. And we got to pretend like we care. And I just don't care. Well, good for you. But what do you say, Tom?
I'm with you. I'm with you. I mean, I'm tired of talking about this too. I'd rather rant about the media some more.
All right. Well, maybe you'll get your chance. We talked about the BLS a little bit earlier, Tom. There is one lonely BLS employee apparently working. That is the one place where the government shutdown, I guess, is really having an effect. But the other news about the BLS is Donald Trump has withdrawn his candidate to head the agency. E.J. Antony will apparently remain at the Heritage Foundation, where he's an economist. This is the latest drama for this agency. It supplies a lot of the data that the Federal Reserve and the bankers rely on, including these monthly employment numbers. So it's back to the drawing board on who will replace the former head of the agency that Trump fired last August. What do you make of the story?
Well, a little backstory is necessary here, right? So Trump fired. He got bad jobs numbers. He fired McIntyre, who was the Biden appointee who was running the BLS, and turned around and nominated E.J. Antony, who, as you mentioned, is from the Heritage Foundation, and so it immediately became a flashpoint political that Trump was doing this to, cook the books in his favor. The administration argued they were actually trying to uncook the books, that these numbers had been faulty and politicized, and they needed to be reformed. And EJ was the guy who could do it. But he became sort of a political flashpoint, number one. There was some reporting by CNN about previous comments that he had made on a social media account. And then his nomination sort of stalled, and it looked like he was going to have trouble winning support from the usual suspects in the Republican caucus. And then by that, I mean Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski.
You mean the most discerning members of the Senate?
I mean, the two or three that are always in the mix when it comes to nominations.
Do their own thinking, yeah.
Yeah, right. So anyway, so he pulled it. So we'll see. The White House and administration said they're going to Trump will nominate someone else soon, and we'll see where it goes from here. But for the time being, BLS is going to continue to operate. As you said, it's not like it's not like a headless agency that's, functioning. It's down to one person now, at least for the foreseeable future. So I'm not sure it's that big of a deal, at least in the short term.
Yeah. Well, one thing we do know right now, Carl, is that Friday's job reports, which might have been bad news for the administration, will not come out. That's the one thing where the government shutdown is going to have a definite effect. What do you make of what's going on with the Bureau of Labor Statistics? I should say I think we keep calling it BLS, but that's what the full
Bureau of Labor Statistics. Yeah. Well, first of all, the opposition to this young nominee was that he was not a statistician. He was underqualified. Heritage Foundation put out statements saying he's a brilliant young economist. We welcome him back. Great. But, that he needed more seasoning, that that he was being appointed because the suspicion out of loyalty to Donald Trump. He'd worked on the 2025 project,
He wasn't a sufficient lifelong bureaucrat. Is that what you're saying, Carl?
Not any special
that would
expertise.
need more seasoning means.
Well, this gets to the point that Tom is saying, and I won't say it in as snarky a way as Tom just said, but it's a valid point, Tom. That agency had been turning out crap numbers for years, and it turns out we the three of us suspected that they were cooking the books in favor of the Biden administration. It just turns out that they really weren't very good at determining basic things like the employment rate. Now, I'm not criticizing these people who worked on these projects because I don't know them. I don't know what goes into it. But it turns out these numbers are hard. They're not as definitive. The inflation rate, the employment rate. There's some subjectivity to them. It's an art as well as science. Maybe the collection methods need to be updated. Maybe some of the states have politicized their reporting aspects. It turns out it's a very complicated thing. And my point, Tom, is that if you're going to reform that agency and make sure these numbers are good, first of all, A, that's not an easy thing to do. And B, there can't be the taint of partisanship on either side. It has to be, and look, this can be done. There's an institute in Washington called the Guttmacher Institute. It's a pro-choice on abortion. It's a pro-legalized abortion organization. But their numbers on abortion for 30 years have been beyond reproach. They collect the data. They have a viewpoint. Everybody knows what it is. But their view is they'd have more influence if their numbers were accurate. So both the Right to Life Committee and the NARAL use their numbers. And I think if the Bureau of Labor Statistics is going to have confidence again, it has to have that kind of credibility and that kind of certitude.
Well, one of the reasons, Tom, he was controversial too, was that he came out and said that the Bureau of Labor Statistics should stop putting out these employment numbers altogether, which even people like Stephen Moore were like, wait a minute, that's too far. But in the UK, they stopped putting out employment numbers just for this reason, because the numbers, to use Carl's term, were crap. And they are crap. And yet the Federal Reserve and Wall Street banks and everyone makes major decisions based on what they know and we know are crap numbers. And it's just mind-blowing to me that either we can't get these numbers correct, or we don't take Anthony's advice and to say, you know what, let's just stop putting these numbers out until we can figure out whether they make sense.
Well, that seems like on one end, it's just, business as usual. On the other hand, it's don't ever release the numbers again. They're crap. And the common sense, common ground area is, hold on a second. Let's figure out why these numbers what's wrong with them? Why are they wrong? Why are they off by an order of magnitude, every month or every 6 months? And we have to make these massive, yearly revisions. And why is all this stuff happening? Do a real deep dive and try and figure out exactly how the numbers are flawed and how they can be made better and more accurate. And then implement that new process and start producing numbers again. I mean, that would be sort of the best of all worlds, because I think that's a way that you could reestablish some sort of trust in the numbers, because right now, people just simply don't believe them. But to your point, Andy, they're still enormously influential, even as flawed as they are. People are still making huge policy and economic decisions based on these numbers, which seems just crazy.
One more comment, Andy, just one final word. This is we're approaching the 250th anniversary of the country's founding, a revolution that we fought from Britain. And that the UK has stopped doing it is not a reason for us to stop doing it. That's a reason for us to keep doing it.
Well, I think this is interesting because I think we are running the experiment. Friday, we will not have numbers. And much like the government shutdown, we will see if the country falls apart because this agency, which puts out crap numbers, is not putting out crap numbers on Friday. So we'll find out. Anyway, Tom, it was revealed yesterday that the TSA's Quiet Skies program, which gained infamy when it was revealed that Representative Tulsi Gabbard was put on a watch list by this group. They also followed 3 other members of Congress during their time. This is all due to the work of Senator Rand Paul, who chairs the Senate's Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. What do you make of this latest revelation? The program's been stopped by the Trump administration, but it was controversial and was run under the former president.
Yeah, and I mean, it's outrageous. It's a good thing that it stopped. It probably should never have started. And this is one of those things where maybe the program, even if it was started with the best of intentions, trying to make sure that the bad guys weren't getting on airplanes, that it suddenly, as happens so often with bureaucracies, it ballooned into this ridiculous. I think there were over 1 million names on it at one point, including and they started including people who had traveled to DC for January 6th. These people were somehow to be profiled and surveilled and watched as if they were ISIS terrorists. I mean, it's just total bullshit. And so it got politicized. So it's a good thing it's dead. And Rand Paul, God bless him, has been at the forefront of this. And I know people, some people don't like Rand Paul, and he's a thorn in the Republican side often, but the guy is principled. The guy is always, standing on behalf of free speech and, fighting censorship, fighting surveillance. And this is another example. So good for him.
I agree with that, Andy. He opposed this program from the beginning, and there were people, ranging from the leadership of the American Civil Liberties Union to Glenn Greenwald to people on the right. Rand Paul's he's a Republican, but he's really a libertarian, who warned of these abuses. Now, they come out of the attacks of 9/11, where you had, 20 Arab terrorists kill thousands of Americans, blow up planes in this, including themselves. And, there were stories then that the CIA and the FBI were, more interested in turf fights than in protecting America. We're going to break down these barriers. TSA was created after that. But there were always people who warned that if you did things like this, it would give government an excuse to spy on fellow Americans. And at the time, I was here in Washington, and we talked about 9/11 on the anniversary. I mean, I was at the White House that day, and I thought, well, we're going to need some of these agencies. But it didn't take long, did it, to start using it for a purpose that was never intended to be used for, and these kind of abuses. And I think Tulsi Gabbard is the poster child for it. So here's a combat veteran of the United States Armed Forces and a sitting member of Congress. But once she becomes a critic of the administration, suddenly she's on this watch list. And it's a cautionary tale.
Yeah. So there's a Racket News. Matt Taibbi has a great piece on this. It's on the front page, I think, of RCP today. So I commend that to you guys. This is part of what he says. He one great little nugget is that the screenshot that they had of Tulsi Gabbard was her congressional photo. So it was her with the American flag behind her. Usually,
so they can't say they didn't know.
Yeah, right. So they usually use, I guess, the passport photo. But this was that's one thing. But here's what he says. He says, if you were chosen for Quiet Skies coverage, marshals trained to prevent terrorists from rushing cockpits would instead be asked to try to listen to your in-flight conversations, register the type of smartphone you used, even mark down, quote, what exact times you went to the bathroom so they could figure out the frequency. This was according to former Marshal Robert McLean. So great sort of color and detail there. But, this is what happens, I guess, when an agency is given sort of free rein. And it was a $200 million investment. They didn't catch one terrorist, according to this report by
No, and
Mikie.
it brings home the sort of absurdity of the program itself. So you've got air marshals on flights that are trying to eavesdrop on the conversations of private citizens. Again, some of the folks that were on this list, I mean, there were a whole host of whole host of people on this list that were not terrorists, had nothing to do with terrorism. Again, some of them were had been in the Capitol January 6th, and it's outrageous.
Well, there was one of them. There was a wife of an air marshal who was on the list because she resembled somebody who was at January 6th. It wasn't even her.
It's absurd, and it just goes to show, though, the government, if you give them an inch, they will take a mile. They will take 5 miles. They will take 10 miles, and they will keep taking until someone stops them. And I think we are right to be skeptical of these programs that, when George Bush and the folks introduced the Patriot Act after 9/11, I think there was a sense that this was necessary and that we had hamstrung ourselves from fighting terrorists. But very quickly that turned into a mass surveillance program on American citizens. It went off the rails pretty darn quickly. And, that's something that should be a lesson that we learn and we don't forget, particularly in an information age that has only grown vastly more monstrous and complex.
Okay, but this is not a Rand Paul infomercial. So go to our YouTube page and like us. We're not, forget Rand Paul. You gotta.
All right. Well, don't forget Rand Paul, but I think you got to give him some props on this. He's done great work, and
we all have. That's why.
And Matt Taibbi too.
Cautionary.
That's right. Yeah. Carl, the governor's race in New Jersey is just about a month away now. It's tightening up. Democratic nominee Mikie Sherrill is facing Jack Ciattarelli. So what do you make about the race, and what are the polls telling us, and where the race stands right now?
Well, the polls have it, close enough that we have to pay attention. I think the RealClearPolitics average, Tom, is about 5 points or just under 5 now?
4.7.
Yeah, and so that means that you can't count on what's going to happen. You've got early voting's about to start, but you have you got a month now. This is October 1st, so this thing is in the home stretch. He would have to make a move. The polls would have to be slightly off. We had Spencer Kimball, who does Emerson polling, on last week, and Spencer thinks he didn't use this word, but he's made it sound like it's maybe a toss-up, that it's maybe really within 2 or 3 points. And Andy, I know you were struck by an aspect of his poll that showed that Governor Phil Murphy is now less popular in New Jersey than President Trump. Mm-hmm. So that shows you it's a restive electorate right now, and it made me wonder how many of those vulgar hecklers at the Ryder Cup who were attacking Roy McIlroy's wife were actually from New Jersey and not New York.
Well, Tom, I mean, the polls, he's still behind in most polls, but the polls are certainly tightening up, and they're moving in his direction.
Not only that, I mean, in our average, sometimes you get this effect called herding, right? So you've got a poll that's one's 4, one's 5, one's 6, and the average is 5 points, right? That's not what we have here. We have 4 polls in September. One of them has it tied, the Emerson poll. Another poll has it 2 points. And then you've got 2 polls that have it 8 or 9 points. So there's a real variance here. The average is 5, but you've got 2 polls that show it really, really close. And you've got 2 polls that show it, almost double digits, not that close. So 2 of those pollsters are wrong, at least when they took their snapshot. And we'll see what happens. So I think this could be a very surprising race. I mean, for a variety of reasons. We may find, and New Jersey is it's one of those states that moved pretty heavily in Donald Trump's direction between 2020 and 2024. And so I wouldn't be surprised if this race is very, very close in the end. I actually wouldn't be surprised if Sherrill wins it because he seems to have a little bit of momentum. But again, we're still a month out. We've got, the government just shut down. That might play, depending on what happens locally in New Jersey. And so we'll have to wait and see. But it definitely is. And I said this a long time ago. I think New Jersey might actually be closer than Virginia, although the polls in Virginia now show that race getting really, really tight as well. So I think we're going to have a couple of really close races here.
Yeah, she's dealing with these two controversies having to do with the U.S. Naval Academy. I will say I'm right across the bridge from the Naval Academy, so these stories caught my eye. So one is that she was blocked from attending her own graduation from the Naval Academy because she was involved somehow in this cheating scandal that happened back in 1994. It was a very big deal at the time. It was a major cheating scandal, involved 30 or 40 students at the time. The second is that two of her own children were admitted to the Naval Academy. Carl, that's a remarkable statistic. That's very hard to do. So there's about a 9% acceptance rate at the Naval Academy.
And two in one family.
Yeah. So it raised some questions. So what do you make of these two scandals? Do they have any saliency in New Jersey? I mean, I tell you, if it were happening here, this would be a very big deal. But I don't know about New Jersey.
And you don't know how much the press is covering it. I haven't seen much in the Times about it. And, I don't expect
What Times? The New York Times?
Yes. I don't expect.
Don't hold your breath, Carl.
A major issue. The great Molly Ivins, great Molly Ivins used to say, I don't do children. And what she meant was, attack the children of politicians. And so for purposes of this show, I'd like to stipulate, as far as I know, that her children who were admitted to the Naval Academy are highly qualified and would have gotten in from any state and are great scholar athletes and just will be terrific future leaders of the United States military. Because I don't know any different. And that's really my assumption. However, she, put out a press release boasting about all the New Jersey kids that she'd gotten into the academy that had helped get in. Their picture they weren't pictured. They have their father's last name. It looks like she was trying to kind of avoid this very story that we're talking about. And that's a little sketchy. Then she, Cory Booker stood up and said, well, I wrote the nominating letter for one of them. It wasn't, she didn't do it. The mother didn't do it. And then another congressman said the same thing. And again, it's probably right, but they're Democrats and, all she has to do is make a call. So nobody likes favoritism. So there's this thing hanging over. In terms of the cheating scandal, my guess is, Andy, I remember that scandal. I didn't cover it, but I remember it well. And if she had been implicated in cheating, I don't think they would have let her walk. I don't think they would have let her graduate. But there's some way she's involved tangentially or on the margins that she wasn't allowed to participate fully in the graduation ceremonies. And I think she should explain what it was that she did and just make this go away by talking about it. Because I don't think she cheated. So she should try and make this go away. And the longer she just, when they fudge these things, they make them worse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she did fly helicopters. She did serve honorably. So
that's right.
We do have that.
Yeah, but the combination of the two stories, right, side by side. So she was implicated in a cheating scandal, and then turned around and used her influence to get two of her kids into the Naval Academy. I mean,
but Tom, that's what we don't know, if she used her influence, and we don't know that she was implicated. But that's what's floating around. And that's why I think she ought to have a press conference and lay this stuff to rest.
She didn't use her influence to get her kids, two of her kids, into the Naval Academy?
That was my inference, but we don't know that.
Okay. All right. Well, it is interesting in an era where, I've got kids who are two who've gone to college, one who's going to college next year. So I've been through this process. This is my third time now. And, I went to Princeton, and I've got a, good group of friends that all went to Princeton. And I would say the vast majority of our kids did not get into Princeton because it's too freaking hard. And being a legacy means nothing these days for most people. So, forgive me if I'm a little skeptical of how a graduate of the Naval Academy gets two of her family members in, and and we're supposed to just say, oh, well, there's no influence involved there at all. It's, and again, they may be great students and all that, but nevertheless, it just seems a little bit on its face, Carl. It seems like smacks of nepotism to me.
Yeah. Here, Carl, this is an explanation she gave for this, which and I'll see if this satisfies you. She said, in order to remove even the appearance of a conflict of interest, my children did not compete in my office's Service Academy nomination process, but instead they were nominated by these two senators, George Helmsley, who's retired, and Cory Booker, who's still there. Do you find that a satisfactory explanation? Like, I didn't nominate him myself, but my two people from the Democratic delegation from my state who I happen to, come on.
As far as it goes, the statement was fine. But if you're a reporter, the obvious follow-up question would be, did anyone from your office call Cory Booker? And since I know Cory Booker, how many times did you have to call him to get his attention?
Right. Well, and even if they didn't call, it's just, I do think it's an appearance of.
If they didn't call, that's not exerting influence. If she actually had nothing to do with it and they were inspired, by their mother's service and they're better students than Tom's friends at Princeton, as kids.
Oh man, I'm sending this to the group chat. You're in trouble.
Yeah, right.
I know a lot of my friends' kids, and were fantastically qualified.
Yeah. Well, maybe they should have applied to the Naval Academy. Who knows?
Maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, you're listening to Real Clear Politics. I'm Andrew Walworth. I've got Tom Bevan with me and Carl Cannon. That's our program for today. If you like the program on YouTube, go ahead and hit those buttons. Send us a text or an email. Let us know what you think. And we're on the apps as well, so you can hear us there. And we'll be back tomorrow. And tomorrow we'll be on Sirius XM in our regular time slot, and we'll be on our regular places as well. So you can't avoid us. That's our program. Have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow.